I'm Charles Duffy, and this is Political Pulse. Tonight, we're very honored to have on a Congresswoman from Maryland's 4th District, Donna Edwards. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's really great to be with you.
Appreciate it. And the 4th District, I think 1/3 of the 4th District is Montgomery County, 2/3 is Prince George's County. But you've been in there a couple of years now, and you were not a lifelong politician. You were kind of an outsider. Now you're kind of in there. You're elected. You're a congressman. What's it like?
Well, it's been terrific already, and I've been able to kind of get in. I came in a special election actually in June 2008, and so I think I had a little bit of time to get my feet wet and get to know my colleagues and kind of make sure I understood the process, which I was familiar with before because I'd worked in and around the Hill. But it's been really terrific. We've worked on already some great legislation for the country, but also for Maryland. And I wouldn't trade this experience. I'm really humbled to be able to represent the people of the 4th District, and I take it really seriously. Is it
what you thought it would be, or is every day you kind of learn something new that you say, God, isn't that something? Because you were not in elected office before you ran.
Right. I mean, I had worked as a public interest advocate for groups that lobbied the Congress, and so I knew the Congress and the kind of workings. But it is different to be in Congress and a member and representing a congressional district. And so I've had to just learn really quickly. That's all. And I mean, I feel like in some ways it's kind of the story of my life. You grow up in the military, moving from school to school. You learn pretty quickly how to adjust, how to figure out, kind of what makes things turn, and I've been able to do that.
Mm-hmm. You've only been in there for a short period of time, but you've become a leading voice on some of the big issues of the day. You're beginning a lot of press, and sometimes you disagree with some of the established leaders out there. I know many times you agree with President Obama on many issues, but sometimes it seems like you've been disagreeing with him. One of those issues is the Afghanistan war. President Obama in the summer said, hey, it's a war of necessity. It's fundamental to the defense of our people.
Well, and I didn't agree with President Obama's assessment, and I had the opportunity to share that with him earlier in the year after I had returned from Afghanistan, and as I was preparing to vote or not vote for the supplemental appropriations bill. Look, I represent the 4th Congressional District of Maryland and have to come, as all members of Congress do, with some kind of independent judgment. And there are going to be times, and I've explained this to many people throughout our congressional district, where I'm going to agree with the president or agree with our leadership or not. For me, the important thing is thinking through these things and these issues, and it was one of the reasons I wanted to visit Afghanistan before we had to take that vote, because I wanted some assessment for myself. I wanted to be able to talk to military leaders in the field, to people in our State Department and other civilians, with Afghan officials and civil society organizations and women on the ground in Afghanistan, so that I could come to an independent decision and hearing from people in our congressional district. And so I feel really confident about my judgment then, and I'll use the same kind of judgment going forward on Afghanistan and any other issue.
Mm-hmm. You were in Afghanistan. The war's been going on, I think, since 2001. Over $200 billion spent in the Afghanistan war. That's separate from the Iraq war. But what did you see over there? What did you talk to people? What kind of got you thinking in your present position?
Well, there are a couple of things. Number one, just being in Afghanistan and seeing that we're dealing with a country that really exists, for the most part, in the 16th century and needs to be brought forward to the 21st century. And it's just as plain as that. I mean, the illiteracy rate is really high. I met with women who struggle to go to school when they can, but who really deeply struggle to be involved in their government. I saw on the ground the civil society structures really are not sustained and built up. The central government just doesn't function. I think that we could see that with the elections that just passed in Afghanistan, that there's a deep level of corruption and mistrust of the central government, and that's the government that we're, for all intents and purposes, allied with. It was very clear to me, talking with both Afghan military officials and our military officials and NATO forces, that in Afghanistan there is a distinction between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Not all Taliban are Al-Qaeda, not all Al-Qaeda are Taliban, and there's a system of warlords that's existed there for centuries, and it's going to be important if we're going to make a commitment to Afghanistan. I think it's important for us to know that it's not a 1 or 2 year military commitment. It's probably more like a 20 or 30 year commitment to that country, and I think without having a full strategy for Afghanistan, that it's really irresponsible for us to simply move forward and ramp up military forces without having a clue about what an exit strategy would be, what a plan is for the country, and being straight with the American people about what it's going to take to make the investment in that strategy.
You mentioned it's going to be a long-term investment. Recently, I think 8 American soldiers paid the ultimate sacrifice. They died in a battle over there. Many billions of dollars now have been spent over there. But it seems like some of your thinking on the military and war is impacted by the fact that your brother and your father were in the military.
Very much so. I mean, I care really deeply about our servicemen and women. I also care deeply about the families and the sacrifices that they make, and that's why I think it's really imperative for us to be very careful about our decision making. And I know the president is trying to do that, but my judgment at this point, especially if we aren't able to hear any other information about how we put together a real strategy for Afghanistan, is that the direction we're going now doesn't really make sense. And my own experience, both in my family growing up in the service, my dad's experience, my brother's experience, and seeing the commitment of our troops. I mean, when I was in Afghanistan, I had a chance to sit down with some of the servicemen and women who are just so courageous, unbelievably courageous, and willing to do what it is that we ask them to do. I just think that we have to be really careful about what we ask them.
As I stated, many issues you agree with the president. Another issue that there might be a little room is the Iraq war. I think we've spent over $600 billion in Iraq. And I think in January, February, the president was talking about, hey, we need to pull out of there, but we're going to leave a good number of residual troops back there. I think he mentioned 50,000, and that's a lot of troops. And it seemed like you had some type of difference. Your opinion might be different than leaving that many troops back in Iraq.
Well, I do have a concern about what the residual troop levels are that will be left in Iraq. I mean, it's really clear. It seems from the administration at this stage that we probably are only going to be down to, I think, about 120,000 troops at the end of this year. The more complete drawdown is not going to happen until 2010, 2011. And then we'll leave the residual of 50,000 troops. Part of my concern is about counting both the military service people that were leaving there, but also all of these independent advisors, which go into the tens of thousands who are left there. And again, I think it's important for the American people to understand fully what our commitment is, and that's what I ask of the administration and administration officials, and I think the same holds true for Iraq. Now, Iraq is in a very different position even than Afghanistan. Iraq was accustomed to living under a central government structure, had some semblance of military and other kind of law enforcement. They've been able to have law enforcement and military trained in a way that is not really, it's not like apples and apples when you compare Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. And obviously the president has a much different perspective. I mean, he looks at things, the defense of the United States, and he knows that the 9/11 attack came from the Afghanistan, Pakistan area, the terrorist forces. But now he's looking. I guess there's a recommendation from the commanding general in Afghanistan to put 40,000 additional troops in there. And he's looking basically to stabilize, and he has to make a decision whether he wants to go along with that. But it seems like he's looking at the big picture, wants to stabilize both of those countries for the long term. Of course, nobody knows how much that's going to cost, but it seems like that's where he's coming from. He's in Iraq. He's probably, you reduce the forces. He thinks that Iran might go in there and fill the void, and some of the terrorist groups. So.
Well, I think, the major significant problem with Afghanistan and Pakistan is that border region, the mountainous border region. This is where 8 service members' lives were lost in a battle with the Taliban, just this past weekend. And of course, Pakistan poses additional kinds of security concerns. There are nuclear weapons in Pakistan, and so that's a different concern. And we want to make sure that that's protected. Now, in Afghanistan, I know when we flew over that region, that merely looking at the mountains and the villages buried beneath the mountains told me as a layperson that would be an incredibly difficult fight. And so I think it is important for the president to take in the information from the generals, from his advisors, and then come up with, and tell the American people what the strategy will be. And I'm gonna wait to hear what that strategy is before making a next decision. But I have to tell you, at this stage, I'm really skeptical about whether an increased military strategic operation is what Afghanistan needs and can take, and whether the civilian population there will be amenable to that increase of troop levels. I'm also concerned about our NATO allies and their commitment. Several of our allies have already announced that they're actually reducing operations in Afghanistan, which poses a huge vulnerability for us, and indeed puts us as the only game in town in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. And the U.S. can't go it alone, and I think Russia found that out in Afghanistan. They waged war over there and finally pulled out. But another big issue of the day that you've certainly weighed in is the healthcare debate. We're in the midst of the healthcare debate, and I read where you want a robust public option out there. What would that look like?
I do. I mean, I think that a public option as one of the choices, the array of choices that people who are eligible to, who don't currently have health care benefits now under their employer, because maybe their employer is too small or they don't have health care, they'd be able to choose from among several different health care plans, and one of them would be a public health insurance option. And what that means is that it would be an insurance option, and I think that it has the effect of providing for competition, lowering costs for all of us, because you have a huge number of people who would be put into a pool and could leverage what that plan costs, and provide accountability for the private insurers who remain competitive in the market. I think it's a key component of reform, and I have been pushing very strongly in the House of Representatives. I made that argument along with my colleagues in the Congress and the House, and I've made that argument directly in other conversations with the White House administration officials and with the president.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to our break. We're going to be right back with Donna Edwards from Maryland's 4th District, a third of which is Montgomery County. We'll be right back.
Clarence, these are my peeps!
We're back with Donna Edwards, Congresswoman from Maryland's 4th District, and we're talking about healthcare. You had town hall meetings. I read where yours were the most behaved public were at yours for some reason. A lot of respect it seemed like was paid. But what was that like? First of all, the town hall meetings, and secondly, you talked about the public option, but everybody says the Senate, the public option's dead. Like 3 or 4 the moderate conservative Democrats, the public option is just not going to sell in their state. Kent Conrad, North Dakota, Max Baucus, Montana, Senator Lincoln down in Arkansas. But is that something that kind of you're focused on?
Well, I mean, I've been very focused on the public option as one of the components of healthcare that I think is going to lower costs, provide competition, and provide accountability. I think there's some other things that we're doing on healthcare too that are really important. Eliminating exclusions for pre-existing conditions. You know, making sure that you can't just be dropped from healthcare coverage, and a lot of insurance reforms and system reforms that are really important. But I think combining those with the public option is going to meet the goals that the president has set out. Now, I understand what's happened in the Senate. We've all been reading about it, we've been hearing about it, but that's why we also have a House of Representatives. And I have encouraged our colleagues to stay focused on getting the strongest bill possible out of the House of Representatives with a public option so that we have the leverage to get a strong bill also out of conference once the Senate passes its bill. So this is part of the process. You know, there are, I think, 5 bills now, 3 in the House and 2 in the Senate. 4 of them contain a public option. Only 1 of them does not. And so I think that we still have a long way to go in this process, but we have to get it done this year for the American people. And yep, I held town hall meetings. They were great. I think it's really important as a member of Congress to stand in front of constituents, to hear concerns, and hear those concerns that are voiced, hear the stories that people tell about their experience with the healthcare system, and use that to inform the debate in Congress. And I know that my colleagues feel the same, even though some of them were, let's just say, more passionate than others.
Exactly. All these things cost money. Iraq war, Afghanistan war, healthcare. I mean, a lot of people are concerned about the costs, but we're looking at a $1.8 trillion deficit this year. There's a $10 trillion national debt, and growing by leaps and bounds every day, which the national debt might double over the next decade. How do we pay for all this?
Well, I think people are rightly concerned about the debt and the deficit. I will say that, you know, when the president came in January and we began this new Congress, he inherited, you know, actually a financial meltdown, an economic crisis, you know, high unemployment that couldn't be sustained, and has needed to tackle those things, which we did with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the stimulus bill, and moving money out into states to begin to put people back to work. I think what we've seen is kind of a flatlining in some ways. We were losing 600,000 plus jobs a month, and now it's still a lot of jobs, but it's about 253,000 jobs that were lost just this last period. I think that, you know, we will see some continued higher employment. We've done some things like extending unemployment benefits. We're working on extending unemployment benefits again. A lot of the stimulus money still hasn't even gone out, even here in Maryland. So we'll begin to see a lot more projects in the spring and the summer next year. The housing markets, we've tried to provide some kind of foreclosure relief for some homeowners and try to stabilize the housing markets. And then let's go to figure out how we can pay for things like health care. I think that we've come up with a deficit neutral plan over in the House of Representatives to pay for health care, and I think that that's important. But we also have to look at the way that things like, you know, spiraling health care costs are actually contributing to you know, the problems that we're having being competitive globally.
We talked about some big national issues, but you work on, I know you're working on some bills that impact locally, like the Chesapeake Bay, clean water. You're working with people like Chris Van Hollen, the congressman here from the 8th District.
You know, what's really great is here in Maryland, we actually have a great working relationship in our delegation, and so I've had the good fortune of being able to work with both Chris Van Hollen and our Majority Leader Steny Hoyer on issues affecting the metropolitan region around metro funding, for example, and safety of our metro system, on the Chesapeake Bay with our entire delegation, because we all share an interest in protecting the Bay, whether we're in the suburban areas here in Maryland or we're on the Eastern Shore. And this is paying off, a great benefit both to Prince George's and to Montgomery counties.
Politico is a big political website, www.politico.com, and it's a national political website. I check it every day for sure, but they named you as one of the rookies of the year, one of the 50 politicos, I guess, this year. And they said that there's some buzz that, maybe someday you're gonna run statewide. Are you focused on how, being a congressman, or do you look down the road for maybe someday down there running for U.S. Senator or an office like that?
I'm really focused on being the best representative for the 4th Congressional District and working with the members of our delegation, our senators included, to do what we can both for Maryland and our congressional district, but also trying to figure out the best way forward for the country. And I'm very invested in learning. And I came to the Congress, I promised the people of the 4th District that I'd continue to be a reader, and I would continue to be a student of public policy, and that's what I've done. When it came to the health care bill, for example, I did read that, 700-800 page health care bill so that I could understand it. I read our energy bill so that I can understand it, and that's the commitment I made to the people of the district, and I think that's just been rewarded. And my parents always told me not to believe the hype, but keep working.
It's hard for me to believe, but there's some talk of maybe you having a Democratic challenger in the Democratic primary. I'm not going to name names, but that's surprising to me. You took on Al Wind, who was an incumbent, a long-term incumbent. You're very opposed to the war. He voted for the Iraq war. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I work hard for the people of the 4th Congressional District, and I've always believed, because I came out of doing civic engagement work, that as long as you're doing your job as a member of Congress, any elected official, the voters recognize that, and I hope that that's what they recognize in me. And this is a democratic process. People can run for office. My job is to continue to do the work and to make the case to the voters of the 4th Congressional District that I deserve to keep the job. And I don't think being in Congress is an entitlement. I think it requires work, and that it requires proof of that work to the voting public. And so I like that kind of accountability because it keeps me on my toes.
But doesn't it bother you a little bit? You were the one out there, saying, hey, Al, when you voted you voted for the Iraq war, I'm going to take you on. You were not successful the first time you ran against him in the primary. A lot of effort, a lot of fundraising, and then you finally defeated Mr. Wynn. But you didn't see any of these. You hear rumors of people running, but you didn't see any of those out there. Does that have you taken notice of that fact?
Well, I think that's true. It's just a fact. But I took on the former congressman because I thought it was important to make a case to the voters that we needed change, and that I would be able to bring that and bring the kind of representation to the office that I believe that the voters of the 4th Congressional District deserve. And if somebody else wants to make that case, go to it. But I see people all the time throughout our district. I'm in the coffee shops, I'm at the grocery stores, I'm doing town hall meetings, I'm at the senior centers, I'm at the community centers, at the churches and synagogues, and I like being out there with the people of the district and hearing from them, and I enjoy being on Capitol Hill working for them. So at the end of the day, folks are going to make their decision, and we all have to live with that. And I'll just continue to work and to make the case to the people of the district that not only did they give me the job and trust me with the job, I'm humbled to have it, but I want to keep it too.
And you're still a young person, but when you look back at your life, who would you say had a big impact on your life, like people in your personal life or relatives, or when you look back?
I think most assuredly my parents, both my parents, my father, who died 20 years ago, and I still think about him. I think about us as a family sitting around the table talking about the issues of the day, talking about politics, being engaged, and I value that tremendously. And my dad and I were great Scrabble competitors, and so he imposed on us the reality check of always paying attention to the English language, always reading, being great students of history and of language, and those are things that I value now. They're the same things that I've tried to instill in my son, and he remains a great influence on me, and those lessons never really go away. And my mother's still living. My mother lives in Upper Marlboro, and she's a great champion and with tremendous life experience. And I think it's terrific when you know, the people you point to who've influenced in your life happen to be your parents. And it's not that I haven't had other influences in public life and in my friendships, but my parents, you know, they're my heroes.
So I'm sure you feel your dad's presence, but do you ever wish he was there and say, God, Dad, you can't believe where I'm sitting and who I'm meeting with, you know, I'm here at the White House or I'm in a meeting with the president?
I do that all the time. You know, my dad's birthday was actually October 1st, and I remembered yet again all of those life lessons. And so I think sometimes I do say, I think, you know, maybe my dad's nudging me saying that's good work.
Interesting. Political heroes. Who are some of your political heroes?
Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Jordan. I remembered, you know, staying up, you know, watching Barbara Jordan at the Democratic Convention.
1972, wasn't it?
That's right, I did. And she talked about the common good and the importance of us investing in the common good. And again, a lesson that I've taught. Shirley Chisholm, you know, unbossed, unbought. I love that because I like to think of myself like that. And you know, when I came into Congress, I found out that I was the first African-American woman to represent Maryland in the United States Congress. And I've been able to see, both with our young girls throughout the congressional district and the women in the district, old and young, who look at me and they just say, you know, you go. And that's been really important to me.
A little known fact, and actually I had Valerie Irvin on the show, and she's a Montgomery County Council member from District 5, and she disclosed that you guys were childhood friends, which, I mean, it's a small world. This was not in Maryland, this was in another state.
That's right. It turns out that Valerie's dad and my dad actually joined the Air Force together as teenagers. And well before Valerie and I were born, and they knew each other. And then we ended up both being, our families, stationed at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, and living, you know, 3 or 4 houses away from each other. And so we were able to reconnect, and then back out here, and we're both in politics. And so Valerie's a tremendous friend, and more than that, she's a great leader. And we've been able to work together and, you know, talk together and think together over the years, and I value her friendship tremendously, but it's something that goes well beyond politics.
Congressmember Donna Edwards, Maryland's 4th District, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you, Tim.
Please come back. And I'm Charles Duffy, and this is Political Pulse. Remember, if it's Tuesday night at 9:30 or Thursday night at 9, it's Political Pulse on Channel 16 TV, and the show's now on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 6 p.m. We'll see you next week.
So, son, what'd you do in school today?
Well, first I went to spelling, and then that was over. And then study hall, and then that was over. And then it was lunchtime, so I went to lunch. And then I ate it, and then lunchtime.
The less art
then
kids
we
get,
had recess, and then that
the
was
more it
over,
shows.
And then school was over, and now I'm here.
Are yours getting enough?
Sounds like yesterday.
Art. Ask for more.
There's something you should know about me. I'm cold. I'm calculating. I get what I want. If you get in my way, I'll wreak havoc upon you. I can leave you weak, limp, twisted, confused. If you want to live to see tomorrow, you answer to me, and you answer quickly. I am a stroke.
Learn to recognize a stroke and act quickly. Time lost is brain lost.
It's a great privilege to represent you